Hey there, so I'm going to do a real quick tutorial on how to do a basic color correction in Davinci Resolve. I've got Davinci Resolve 10, the light version, which essentially has the same functionality as the full version of Davinci Resolve, except Davinci Resolve Lite is free. You can get it from the Apple App Store, or you can get it from Davinci's website if you don't have a Mac or you don't have the App Store on your computer. So first I'm going to hit Command N, or I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to select New Timeline to create a new timeline. I'm just going to leave a name Timeline 1. You can name it whatever you want. Hit Create. I'm going to grab the first clip that I have, Shift click the last one. You want to do it in that order because it's going to put them in the timeline in the order that you click on them. So I'm going to drag the first one down, drop it in there, and our timeline's ready to go. So we're going to come down here, we're going to click on the Color tab, which is going to bring us into our color correction screen. So this is where all of your color correction is going to happen. You do need, in the bottom right corner, I've got this waveform and this parade viewer right here. So if you don't have that on yours, you're just going to come to View, come down to Video Scopes, and then you can click on Off. I have 4 up. For this, you really only need 2 up, but I like to see everything I'm working on. It doesn't take up too much space on my screen. In the top right corner, you're going to see nodes. So Davinci Resolve is a node-based editor, which is unlike something like After Effects, where you have a layer-based editor. I personally prefer a node-based editor because you can go back and make changes real easy. It's easier to not get lost, and it's just easier to see what's going on. Coming back to our footage, you can see we've got pretty blue cyan footage here. Shot on a sunny day, so it shouldn't look like this. Just looks like the white balance is pretty off. So that's going to be our first correction. So I'm going to rename this first node. I'm going to right click on it and hit change label. Everyone has their own system of doing this. I like to make the first one no correction. That way, if I make a mistake, I can just go back to my first node, and it'll be easy, or I can see the difference between where I started, where I finished. So that's that. I'm going to press Alt or Option on a Mac, S, to create a new node. And that's just going to be exactly what we have here. So now we can make changes to this, and it's just going to apply them directly on top of our no correction node. So I'm going to rename this one, and I start with naming this one. I'll name this one the shadows. You can name it darks, whatever, and I'll explain that in a second. So I create a new node for each correction I make so I can visually see what's going on. If you look in the waveform and the parade down here, you can see our shadows. This represents the shadows, or the darks in your footage down here on the bottom. It's not lost too much, but you can see some of these are getting clipped off just a hair. It doesn't look too bad in our footage. But up on top, you can see these are the highlights up here. Those are getting clipped pretty well up there. We're losing a lot of information, and you can see that in the footage. Our whites in some of these areas are just blown out. There's no detail in them. So first we're going to start with the shadows. I always start with the shadows. We're going to adjust that. That'll be a quick and easy one. So if we come down here to the bottom left on our color wheels, we have our lift, our gamma, and our gain. Our lift is going to be our shadows, which is what we're going to work with first. Gamma is mid-tones, and our gain is our highlights. First, we're just going to adjust the overall. We're not messing with the hue of any of those for the time being. For the shadows, I'm going to come down here to this wheel, and if I drag it to the right, you're going to notice in the waveform that the entire waveform is going to rise, and you're going to see in the viewer that those shadows are going to become more gray. We're going to, I guess, gain so much information it gets grayed out, and we don't want that. So we want a happy medium where we're not losing information because it turns black, where it's getting crushed, but we don't want it to be too gray either. So we're just going to want it to barely rest right above the bottom line of the waveform. So I'm just going to bring it over just a little bit, and you're going to see it rise over there. Maybe just a hair more. And comes up just a little bit. That looks pretty good. Maybe to the left, just a hair more. bring it down just a little bit so we get some rich blacks in the shadows there. So that's looking pretty good. Alright, so we're going to move on and we're going to do the highlights next. So I'm going to hit Option S, create a new node, and I'm going to label that highlights. And for that one, now we're going to come over here and we're going to adjust the gain on that wheel at the bottom also. And we're going to see the same thing, I suppose, an opposite happen in the waveform. So I'm going to pull it to the left until we get some more information in those highlights. So it brings the entire thing down, which in here it looks like the blue is mostly what's getting clipped, and we have a lot of blue in the scene, so maybe we don't want to bring it all the way down because that'll adjust itself also as we bring the blues down. So for now I'm going to leave the highlights there. We get a little more information. Maybe I'll bring it over to the left just a slight bit more, but it's not looking too bad. So our main issue now is the hue. We've got this cyan blue kind of cool look to the image. So I'm going to hit Option S. I'm going to create a new node, and I'm going to label this one hue. And that's where we're going to make our color adjustment. So we're going to move over. What we see on the parade here, the blues are pretty high. They're way up there, so I want to bring those down a lot. And you can see on the histogram also, the majority of the blues right here they're pushed all the way to the right, and we want that to line up a little bit more. We want all three of these lined up as much as possible. It's a little subjective how you want your footage to look, but that's what we're going for. So for the hue, I like to come over up here. We've got these little pictures. These are all basically editing the same thing. They just show it differently. So here we have our color wheels, and those are good for slight adjustments. So here I'm going to come over to this option, the primaries. And in our gain, you see we have this to work with. So our gain is where we're going to make our adjustment on this. What I want to do, I want to bring the blues down. So I'm going to simply click on it and start to drag the blues down. We'll start to see the blue disappear in our footage as well as lower in the parade view over there. See, it's coming down, it's starting to turn a little bit yellowish maybe. So we can bring that down. Maybe we'll bring the red up just a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. And you can see it's starting to even out. It's starting to look a lot nicer and cleaner. The blue and the green are pretty lined up right here. Maybe a little more on the red. Maybe I went a little too far in the blue right there. Bring that back up just a little bit. So that's actually looking pretty good right there. So now I am going to go back over to my color wheels. And now I want to adjust my highlights just a little bit more. So I'm going to double click on the highlights, and then I can go back and change that. And everything that I change here is going to affect the hue also, which is nice about the node editor. I can go back and change things pretty easily. So I'm going to grab my gain. I'm just going to bring it up just a little bit. Not much. Just to the right a little bit. And we've got a pretty good looking scene here now. Maybe the railings of this bridge could use a little more adjustment. Maybe because they're so white, they're still a little cyan. We can select that out later on and just adjust that if we want to. Maybe I'll pull a little more cyan out of it. Bring this up towards red a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So now we've got a much a cleaner look, and you can see what I just did on the gain. All I do is grab this little dot in the middle, and you can drag it in which direction you want. It pretty much does the same thing as what I did before. It gives you a little more control because you've got the whole spectrum here. Another thing to note is if you don't know color theory, it's something you should learn just to learn what are the opposites of which color cast. So if you see down here, if it's pretty cyan, you want to bring it in the opposite direction, drag it up here towards red. It kind of visualizes it well for you, but it can't hurt to learn that kind of stuff. So we've got a pretty nice looking scene here. So I'm gonna, next step, because all of our shots here seem to have a similar color cast to them, they all seem more or less to be this cool tone. Since this one we got this looking good, to save us some time, I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to grab a still from it. And that's going to put a still image, it's going to kind of copy all of our work, and it's going to put it in the gallery here. So when we move on to our next clip, select the next one. It's got this color cast, which we can probably correct with the same things we did before. So basically what we're going to do is copy that correction and place it on this. So you're going to right click on that still we took from before and simply hit add correction. And you'll notice in the nodes, all of those corrections we did show up here, and this one looks pretty good already. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to just go ahead and add that correction to all of the clips that we have. I'm going to grab this one, and I'll select through the end, and I'm going to right click that first still, and I'm going to add the correction to all of them. And you notice down here this kind of rainbow thing underneath the clip shows it appears when you've edited one of the clips, so you know which ones you've done, which ones you still have to do, haven't done. You notice it's not there on the first one because we didn't do anything to that. But all of these seem to look pretty good for the most part. Some of them may be able to use a minor adjustment. This one's a little dark, you can see that in the waveforms here. But for the most part, we've got a good starting point from that first one. So that's a basic color correction that'll get you started. And there's a million things to learn with this program that we haven't even touched on. It's a pretty powerful program. So this will get you started. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments area, and I will do my best to respond to everybody. Thanks for watching.